she was more worried. I was like, he's going to be fine. She did not like it one bit. As soon as he went there, and then he got admitted, and I still was like, oh my God. My worry was like, my poor dad, like, this man has never been hospitalized in his life. He had one overnight stay in a hospital when he had his knee replacement surgery. That was it. He's never been sick. Like, he has no conditions. Like, he just got a physical like a few months before this happened, and they were like, maybe you could probably lose 10 pounds, but that's because his knee. He blamed it on his knee. He couldn't work out because his knee. That's why I gained weight. But other than that, he was like perfectly healthy.
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
And I didn't like that feeling.
But your father, you had told me your father was integral in getting you help. The help that maybe not the help you wanted, but the help you needed.
Yes.
And he was standing there behind you because
he was.
Do you have children?
No.
When you see your child for the first time, you finally realize A, what true worry is, and B, what true love is.
Oh, that's nice.
It's 100% truth. And if you don't feel that, get the hell out and give the kid up for adoption too, and give him a chance. So your father sounds like a loving father. Sounds like he was always attached to you, and then comes and gets you help and comes to your rescue. He is the police officer. He is the
doer.
He is the superhero wearing a badge. And now it's time to help his daughter with this horrible, horrible problem.
Yes.
And I guess he did it.
He did. He drove me to rehab. And I'll never forget the car, I call them the car talks. Every time my dad would pick me up from a situation like that, like, when I first said I need to go to rehab, or like other times where I was like in trouble and I needed him and I had no choice, like he would always give me these like loving but real ass lectures, I want to say, talks in the car where I did not say a word. It was like not my place to speak. Like he wanted to talk. And it was always coming from a place of like hurt and worry as my father. And never like he never ever like shamed me or like brought up the true like, I don't want to, this is what I say, like junkie shit that I was doing and being like, that's the lowest of the low, but it was.
Well, this sort of transitions into why we're here tonight. And the reason we had to lay that groundwork is to realize that from your father, specifically your father, I'm not saying your mother didn't love you, but specifically for your father, that groundwork to know that your kid's in trouble and I need to go help my child get free of this. And he does this and he's successful at doing this and he's integral in your recovery and your sobriety. And then this thing happens to the world in March of 2020, where we've heard about this thing coming over from China. There's virus, and it's supposed to be super strong, and everybody sort of ignored it, and then it comes into California, and then it starts working its way across the country. And, of course, we're talking about COVID. And what was your father's reaction? We're trying to sort of changing gears here, but what was your father's reaction to when the whole pandemic started?
Great question, because I always remembered that. I remember texting him. It was like March 13th, 16th, like right around the time when like the world shut down. It was like in the United States, and being like, Dad, like it's here. Did you hear? Like, and he was like, oh, it's nothing. It's like the flu. We're all going to get it. And I was like, we're all going to get it. Like, I was like, he just knew. He was very smart. He just did a lot of research, and I didn't know that. I was like, I thought it was going to like hit a few people and they were going to be the unlucky ones. But he's like, no, it's like the next flu. It's going to hit everyone. We're all going to end up getting it. And people like us don't have complications. People like us don't die from COVID. He literally said that. And he believed that, and I believe that. And I think most people believe that. Like, when they got COVID, unless they were like immunocompromised or
comorbidities or something like that,
they weren't like worried, especially once it started to like make its way in the country and people saw like, yes, there was devastating effects for like the elderly, but like a lot of people got it and they just recovered from it.
Well, the statistics that came out originally where the COVID deaths came along with an average of 4 comorbidities within that person, whether they're overweight or they had heart problems or they're a smoker or whatever. And they listed all these different things, but there was so much misinformation being thrown around that nobody really knew what to believe. It was what do I believe this week?
Right.
So when it first came out, I had a very similar attitude as your father. all right, if I get it, I get it. There's nothing I can do about it. I knew these things hit. I've seen these things before, and we do lose some people. It's just, it's a
Right.
fact of life. We do lose some of these people. And, who was the first person in your family to get it?
I think it was me.
And what were your symptoms? Did you get the
Flu.
first wave or the
So
second wave?
yeah, so I think I had it twice. I had it, I think it was the first wave, and then I got like the third, which was Omicron.
I had the Omicron. That's what I
I
had.
missed Delta, and that was the one that my dad most likely had because it was around the time that Delta was around, which I remember being like, it hit some people harder.
The Omicron, real
The
super
Omicron,
super
yes.
sore throat.
It was supposed to be the more mild of the three, but like came with those type of symptoms, like the sore throat, like you felt like you just were sick with like the flu, and that's kind of how I felt.
My COVID experience was absolutely fantastic.
Oh, that's
So
good.
all my kids got it. Me and my kids got it at the same time. And we sat in the back room together, and I got 5 days to watch TV and movies with my kid. It was
That is
actually a
awesome.
really great experience. But I know the Delta the second variant,
Yes.
that was a little bit more harsh, and that was what people were afraid of. But see, I had worked outside. I worked through the whole thing. And I worked outside, and everybody, so I do construction during the day, and everybody who worked in construction had it because they're a bunch of dirty motherfuckers. Okay,
And
they
you're all like together in like huddles, I feel.
you go into a porta john. Well, it's just like a living COVID
Yes.
bacterium culture.
It's a virus in itself.
So they all had it, and these guys were all fine. They got it. They were over it. They're back to work, and they were fine. So the fear factor for me, I think if I was sitting home all day watching the news like most people, I would have been a lot more scared of it. But your father also, and the reason this relates to you is your father was out there. He was working during this whole thing. He had to be, whatever modified schedule he
Right.
was on. So he had to be out there working during all this thing. So he saw it. He saw the bad, but he also saw the reality of it.
Right.
And when he got that Delta version, was there any fear in him at all?
None. And my dad's whole house had it at the same time. So my brother, my sister, my stepmom, and my dad all had it. And they all were like fine in the beginning, especially. Like I would text my dad every day, how you feeling? I was just giving him like words of encouragement. Like I remember when it hit, like first he's like, I'm feeling a little better. Like I'm starting to turn the corner. And then like a few days later, which was like maybe a weekend, I remember him saying like, I'm not feeling good again. And I'm like, don't worry, like it's coming. You're about to like get over the hump. Like you'll feel better soon.
Time.
Yes, time heals all. But then by like day 10, he was getting worse. And like this is when it first became a little concerning. My dad was not eating or drinking. He like wasn't able to like get food down. And then the final straw was like he went to go walk to the bathroom and he like couldn't go. Like he couldn't walk. So my stepmom had to help him. And then that was the day she's like, we're going to bring you to the hospital just to get checked out. He never complained of not being able to breathe, not once. And then when they got him to the hospital, I was like not worried because this is my dad we're talking about. Like,
And he's in the right place.
Solid. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is where he needs to be. He's going to get fluids. They're going to give him like, some vitamins. He'll be good. My sister, though, my older sister, she's a couple years older than me, and she's like my dad. Like, she's more like, she wants to fix the problem and more like maybe not cynical, but, she was more worried. I was like, he's going to be fine. She did not like it one bit as soon as he went there. And then he got admitted, and I still was like, oh my God. My worry was like, my poor dad, like this man has never been hospitalized in his life. He had one overnight stay in a hospital when he had his knee replacement surgery. That was it. He's never been sick. Like he has no conditions. Like he just got a physical like a few months before this happened, and they were like, maybe you could probably lose 10 pounds, but that's because his knee. He blamed it on his knee. He couldn't work out because his knee. That's why I gained weight. But other than that, he was like perfectly healthy. So they, when he got to the hospital, they basically were like, your oxygen is like scary low. Like it was like in the low 80s.
Right.
And it's supposed to be like 98 to 100. So they were like,
And that's that pulse ox that they
yes,
put on your
correct.
finger. Yeah.
Which they said with COVID, what was unique about COVID was that if a patient presented to the hospital with that low of an oxygen pulse ox, they would be not able to breathe. Like if it was from maybe their asthma, like something other than COVID. But people with COVID were not getting that signal, like I can't breathe for some reason, but it was so low. So my dad never said he couldn't breathe. It's not like he was like, we got to get me to the hospital. I can't breathe. Like he went there and he just was like dizzy. Like he had other symptoms from not having that oxygen.
Makes sense, but eventually he starts to turn for the worst.
Yes.
Was there a moment where the fear strikes you because you see what's coming?
Yes. I remember the moment. He went in on a Sunday. They had him on the oxygen mask. He still, though, was not like sustaining like back to normal.
Even with the oxygen?
Even with the oxygen mask. I would text him and he wouldn't answer. And that was like another red flag. Like we used to send each other memes and like gifts and stuff, and he just wasn't responding. My stepmom said he couldn't talk. He just felt like shit, basically. He didn't really talk to anybody. They FaceTimed once. That was it. And then a week from that, now it was a Sunday, my mom called me and she was like, "Where are you?" And I just knew, like, I knew something was like coming, and I was just like screaming. Like I just started screaming. I was like, what is it? And she was like, "Your dad took a turn today for like the worst and they're putting him on a ventilator." And I just screamed. I feel like my neighbors upstairs thought I was like getting murdered, because that was the worst feeling, that powerlessness. Like there's nothing I can do. Like this is happening without our permission. Like this is happening. And, for the next 2.5 weeks, he was on that ventilator fighting for his life.
And eventually the inevitable happens.
And the inevitable happens. And I was the one who was there that day.
And what was that date?
September 21st, 2021.
September 21st, 2021. We are at that point 6 months into, we're a year, 6 months into
correct.
this COVID thing. We pretty much think that we have some stuff under control.
Definitely better.
And obviously we don't. Now, what I do know, statistically, your father is an anomaly.
Mm-hmm.
Because my father is also a COVID death. But my father was also in renal failure, and that's why he went to the hospital and got COVID in the hospital. And
Right. I remember you telling me
so
that.
that is perfectly acceptable. He, in my opinion, he's not a COVID death.
Right.
Although he is classified as a COVID death.
Which is a thing, yeah.
And that's where the statistics were ruled. Your father, what it sounds like to me, is a true COVID death. And I'm going by what you say.
Yes.
Listen, I'm not a doctor or anything like that. No comorbidities, relatively in shape, active person, none of the underlying symptoms that somebody may have. And it really must have opened everybody's eyes in your family.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, wow, you know what? Nobody's safe. Nobody's protected. And it sort of takes away your safety net.
Absolutely.
Now, this guy who was your safety net all along is now gone. How did that affect you in your recovery?
So I remember when, this was happening, I had about 2.5 years clean. And the whole process, like my recovery kicked in like overdrive, like all those things that like we talk about in meetings, and people that I had met in meetings, and that had lost family members, like their children, like terrible, like awful things. Seeing people come and share about that and say that they got through it clean is so important, because it's showing that next person, because we all get a turn. Like we never know. When I didn't expect that 2 years into my recovery at 29 years old, I was going to lose my 59-year-old father. I was not prepared for that. But they say like we all get a turn. So because
it's coming for us all.
Yes, death, we can't escape death, period. But like I saw other people get through it. So when it was my process, like I had a little bit of time, I guess, in those like 2 weeks. It was like literally every day, like, is he gonna live or is he gonna die? Like daily. But we started to prepare for the worst. Like you can never really prepare. But me and my sister, like,
You can brace for impact.
we did brace, and they were honest with us. The hospital was great. That was a good experience. If I can get to that at some point. They were really good to us, but they told us like he is very, very ill. Like it's grave. Like he was in the ICU, and at that point they had him on palliative, I think it's called. It's like not hospice. They're giving you comfort, but they're still
They're still
doing
trying
what
to,
they can
yeah,
to sustain your life.
yeah.
But they're really bracing you for death and keeping you comfortable.
Well, that's good. That's because too often hospitals and medical professionals will lie to try to give you comfort, but it
Yeah.
doesn't give you comfort because it delays the inevitable. That makes the pain of something like this all that much harder
Worse.
to deal
Yeah.
with.
So they were honest with us, so I was able to brace. But I remember like I would sit outside, and I'm not like a prayer person. I was never like super religious growing up, but in recovery, I found like my higher power, which, I sometimes will call God, but I refer to it mostly as higher power. And I would pray every day outside audibly. Like I would sit outside under my little like lamp post and the moon would be there, and I would just literally hands together pray like, please, please heal my dad, like specific, like heal his lungs. Because every day they were like, they're not getting any better. Like, I'm like, oh my God, heal his lungs. Like, come on. And then once that wasn't working, like, I was starting to pray for like the strength to go on and get through this.
The funny thing about a higher power, whatever you believe in, they never give you what you want.
Yep.
They
Exactly.
give you what you need.
Exactly.
Now, your father was like a temporary angel in your life
Right.
who was there to facilitate your recovery and be your rock when you needed a rock the most, something for you to anchor yourself to. And when his job was done,
That was
when
my
you-
job to come in and be that for him.
well, when his job was done with you, his mission was accomplished. Let's put it that way. And what I'm trying to do is, and I think I'm pretty sure I got this right, is put a very positive spin on something so tragic, which is your father's mission was to save you. He accomplished his mission, and there's some beauty to that.
There is.
There's some beauty to that. So now, I'm sure going throughout your life, your father, there were some bad times.
There were.
There were. I'm sure that there were some arguments and some hateful words and stuff. But how often do you remember those?
Not unless I got to dig deep and think.
But you do remember the good things, right?
I do.
So that's what death does.
It's true.
Death wakes us up to the good times that we may have been blinded from for a short period of time. So what's your fondest memory of your father now?
My fondest memory of me and my dad is there's two. I'm gonna do us in the car when we would drive back and forth to school in his house. And like he'd pick me up from school, we drive home. I would always con him into stopping at McDonald's and to get a large fry. And I was like so skinny when I was a kid. Like he said my nickname from him was Bones because I was so skinny. So he was like, all right, I'll get it for you, fatten you up a little. And it never worked, but we would always stop at McDonald's and just like laugh, like just enjoying him as a person. Like he was so funny and he loved like classic rock, and we would listen to like his songs, and he used to play this game that like we would get in the car. He's like, all right, we're gonna do name that tune.
Oh my God, I do it with my kids too. I do it. So when I die, they're going to be naming tunes.
Yep, that's what he would do. He would put the volume and then let like 3 seconds play or less, like 3 chords, and turn it down, and then be like, that is, and say a name. And I don't know if he's right or not, but he was just like doing it for himself to test himself, I guess. But we had fun. So that was one. And then Lake George is definitely another one. We used to go to Lake George every summer. My like integral years, we had a boat. It was just so fun. My dad was so cool. Like we'd be on the boat, like all the other families, we'd let them ride on our boat. Like it was just fun. We used to go to this like shallow bay called Log Bay where you anchor up, and you could like put a bunch of boats next to each other with like the little, buoy to keep you from hitting each other. And we would go from boat to boat and get in the water because it was like waist deep. And just, I remember him always had like a Coors Light, like chilling. And those were his like best memories. And he loved to fish.
So the smile that you have on your face right now tells me all I need to know about your father, and I never met him once.
Yeah.
But I do remember hearing about him from Mike. So, Stefanie, what I want you to do now is I want you to tell our audience where they can find you and give out any plugs that you want. If you want to plug where you went to recovery, whatever
Sure.
you'd like.
So I'm definitely most active on Instagram. My Instagram is Gemini's because I am a Gemini. But it's we had this astrology talk before this started.
Yes, and some male figures in here got way too knowledgeable about astrology.
Kevin found out he's a Virgo. So there's
Kevin,
that.
I'm a Virgo.
So Gemini's, it's Geminins. Eyess. So it's like a little play on words. So the I is spelled like eyes, like your eyes. Always thought that was kind of cool, but
Well, make sure I have looked at your Instagram. You got a lot of good recovery stuff on there, and your YouTube
you.
channel.
Yes, my YouTube channel too. Please check out my YouTube. I feel like that is the real me. Like my Instagram, it kind of got like this little traction going, and I post for like, me, but I also post for someone who's looking at my page saying like, this girl's got 5 years clean. Like I remember when I used to look at people, I just wanted to see them living life. Like I had a friend who got clean before me, and then she met someone, and then they had like the baby announcement, and I remember being like in the thick of it, like trying to get clean and being sick, and just like looking at this person and being like, I want that. Like, and now I have that, but it's easy to forget that like it wasn't always like this, and it didn't always have to be this way. So I like to share my YouTube because that tells my story.
But the great thing is you had to go through all this pain and suffering in order to be this person that you are today. To talk about your father with a smile, even though there were some bad times in the past, those sort of fade away after death, and the good times sort of come to the forefront.
They do.
But you have went through an enormous amount of suffering, from your addiction to your father's COVID death. And if you haven't learned anything from it, it's really a wasted experience.
Yep.
So we're coming to the end of this thing, and I always end every show the same way. And I want to find out what your personal suffering has taught you.
So my suffering taught me that suffering in itself is inevitable, but it brought out like this like warrior in me that like I'm proud to be. Like it's an honor to show up as that person for somebody who doesn't think it's possible. And like I remember being that person, like not having any idea what my life could be. And if I didn't go through what I went through, I wouldn't be in recovery. If I just never picked up a drug, maybe I would have went to school, found a career, but I wouldn't have like a passion.
You wouldn't have a voice.
I wouldn't have this voice, no.
And that's
I
the
wouldn't
most
be able to
important
come on something like this and tell my story if I didn't get through it. Like getting through it brought this honor out of me that like I'm proud of. So people sometimes say like, oh my God, like I can't believe like you're so open about like your story. And it's like, I'm proud of it. I am.
Because you're a diamond, and the only thing that makes diamonds is pressure.
Pressure.
It's pressure. Well, thank you so much for coming in tonight.
Thank
I
you
really
so much.
enjoyed this. I enjoyed sitting down. I can't wait to see what's
Me
in
too.
store for you for the future. And when you have 10 years, we'll have you back in.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
And that's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast, The Suffering of COVID with Stefanie Shellhamer. And let's think about all the stuff that we learned. You can't pour from an empty cup. Kids believe they're invincible. Addicts are unbelievable actors. Invisible enemies can be just as deadly. Safety nets have some holes in them. But most importantly, let suffering bring out the warrior. And that's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget to go to popple.com, put in the code TSP20 for your 20% discount off your digital business card. Follow us on all social media. That's Instagram, Facebook, X, Clapper, OnlyFans. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson. And of course, follow the Suffering Podcast. We'll see you on the next episode.